Thank you for being here today. My name is Allison Leathers. I chair the Lanesboro Business Promotion Group, and we're responsible for planning and executing at least 9 events each year in town. Like you see, Fall into Lanesboro, Experience the Magic. Those are the events that we put on. And over a year ago, a group of us met because we realized there was a need to look at some winter tourism and in terms of how we can better communicate to guests and residents what is open during the winter, and then maybe explore if we can do a little bit more. And that has evolved into why we're here today, with a collaboration with the Chamber, the Business Promotion Group, the City, and the EDA. We applied for a Blandon Foundation grant and received those funds. And through that grant, we hired the University of Minnesota Tourism Center and Dee Dee Lemire, who's here today, to lead this facilitation of the survey that some of us took, and then to gather some more information from us. So please know that there's 2 bathrooms in the Sons of Norway Hall, one at the entrance and one over here. So get up and go whenever you need. There's always coffee and water, and we'll have a morning break with muffins and fruit in a little bit. And then lunch will come at noon. But yeah, just thankfully you all were able to make it today. We're glad you're here and to get some more feedback. And I'll leave it to Dee Dee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can explain that we're all in the same boat. No one has seen the results.
Right, no one has seen these results. So we're excited to hear a little bit of preliminary info. Oh, and also a side note, we've got Michael Seiler doing some recording for us. And we've got Kristen Egan, who's our visual recorder today. So they'll be helping us gather this information that we discussed today.
Did you wish?
Sure. Just to introduce myself and my work a little bit, my name's Kristen Egan. I live down in Decorah. About a decade ago, I lived here, so it's really fun to see some familiar faces. And so what I do is visual recording. I'll be taking notes with words and pictures up here, all analog with markers, etc. My goal is not to be a stenographer, but to capture the essence or the key nuggets of what goes on here today. If at any point, because I am the artist doing this, I filter it through my own perspective, so if at any point you feel like I've misrepresented something or missed something that was really key, I really invite you to come up and let me know. You can either just leave a note on my little material stand over there for me, or you can just track me down and let me know in person. But I really want it to serve as a reflection tool for the group, so we can work together in doing that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be with you all here today and to have so many of you here. I really appreciate it. So, as Allison mentioned, I am Dee Dee Lemire, and I'm really excited to be able to share some of the findings and things that we have from the community survey work and the business survey work that's happened already. So I know many of you have been very, very intimately involved with this process from those very early days, conversations about winter tourism and what could it look like in Lanesboro. But I also know that others of you may not have been part of those conversations. And so we'll talk a little bit about kind of the tourism center that I work with, give you some of that background about the project itself, some of that economic impact of tourism, why does it matter for Lanesboro, and then we'll share some of those survey results. And then for the second half of the morning, we will actually be doing an activity called SOAR, which is Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations, and Results. And so it will give you a little chance to actually participate further if you haven't already contributed through the survey, but to share your thoughts and what your priorities are for your community. So what I would like to do now, so you've heard from a couple of us in the room, and clearly you all are not strangers to each other. It is a joy to me to hear so many voices first thing in the morning and to hear those conversations and the warm greetings to each other. But I would love to have you share your voices in the room further. And I know it takes a little bit of time, but our goal when we're doing community tourism work is to really be building community connections as we are here together today. So what I would like to do is to actually put you all on the spot a little bit and ask you to share your name and your community, because I know many folks are going to be from Lanesboro, but some may be from Wayland or other surrounding communities. And then I would love to hear one word about what winter means to you in Lanesboro. We have somebody itching to start.
I'll start.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Peterson. I serve as the city administrator for Lanesboro, and I also serve as the city clerk for Wayland. My home is actually in rural Fountain, but I think to me, honestly, it's the beauty and the little peacefulness of this winter in Lanesboro.
I'm Melissa Vanderclass. I live in Harmony. Started working for the chamber here about 6 months ago. And I would say winter in Lanesboro, like it's cozy, I suppose.
Oh, just got here. Here's my Susan Schultz, and you're supposed to say where we're from. So I'm kind of a half-time in Wayland, half-time in St. Paul. And I love the ski trail between Wayland and Paul. So to me, winter is respite.
Well, I guess winter in Lanesboro for me is the quiet time of the year. Maybe what you're trying to do with that.
I got no armor. I have nothing to do combat with.
Okay.
I am not here to fight.
No, it's not about that. I'm just saying that's what, maybe
Yeah.
too quiet for many of us. My name's Jane Peck. I'm the director of History Life. So.
My name is Sarah Cohen, and we own the car wash and the laundromat. I had a business years ago downtown as well. We are originally from Spring Valley, but we have a house down here. And Michelle took my answer. It is definitely beauty. You just drive down 8 and it's like taking.
James and Joellen, we run the Annabees, the B&B here in town. We live outside of town here, and I couldn't agree with you more about the beauty of winter, Lanesboro in winter time. It is breathtaking.
And it's relaxing. Listen, I can get started.
I'm Carrie Howell. I own the Coffee Street Inn in Lanesboro, and I guess it's quiet and how pretty it is.
Rich Harold, Harper. Beauty is definitely the part of the town. I see winter as an opportunity.
When you say winter, it's an opportunity.
Yep.
Is it a business opportunity? Okay.
Winter is a combination. You can take a deep breath and relax, which is nice. But at the same time, I would echo Rich's statement that there are opportunities to maybe, ground oneself as well, after the tourists hop out. I appreciate that. And sometimes it's good for thinking about potential opportunities.
I'm Peter Tarkelson, on the other half of the bed and breakfast and winter, I look at it as a chance to catch up on all the projects that we shoved off. Don't take the same, we do mystery nights in the off season. Or mystery afternoons or mornings.
I'm Lori Baki. I own Brandon's Liquor. I'm one of the businesses that is open year-round, 7 days a week. But it's interesting, it is a quieter time, and yesterday I was kind of driving in and embracing that it is quiet right now still, but be ready because things are going to be changing. This weather breaks, and I'm already seeing more influx of visitors coming. So my biggest thing in the winter is just, like Michelle had said, was the peacefulness. And you can kind of take a breath, even though we're open all year round. You can still just feel like that sense that you can just breathe maybe a smidge slower. So that's what I do. Oh, and I'm from Lanesboro my whole life, so.
My name is Jason Reisman. I live in Lanesboro. I'm currently serving as Lanesboro's mayor, among other things. I think what I would think most about winter in Lanesboro, in particular in this setting, is the opportunity for growth.
Can you elaborate a little bit? What does growth mean to you?
Economic growth, diversity growth, just opportunities in general for a 12-month economy, so we don't have to be so seasonal.
Thank you.
My name is Brian O'Connell. I'm new to Lanesboro. Just moved in December, and I'm the owner of Green Gables and excited to get into that venture. I've seen it be relatively quiet over the last few months. And, really, the reason I moved here is because the community is very quaint, it's beautiful, and I want to bring change. I'm from the Twin Cities. I lived there for 35 years. And it'll be a good opportunity to make a change, and I'm excited about that. And certainly want to look and see what else we can do here in the community. I feel like this is a largely held secret in many respects, and I love to share what it is that's the best of Lanesboro with other communities and other people that I think would love to discover more about what we have here. So I'm excited to see the busy times. I'm a little apprehensive about it because I'm here to see we're busy. But I'm really excited to discover what that is.
Welcome on all fronts.
Thank you.
I'm going to put my colleague on.
Yeah, my name is Bruce Schwartow. I live in Casson. And yeah, I'm a colleague of Dee Dee's. And when it comes to winter, I'm sorry, for me, it's moving all the snow that seems to blow in right now. So it's about twice as deep as anything else in the area. But yeah, I enjoy working with Lanesboro over the years. I've been coming here and working with the your visitor center and government and everything over the last 15, 20 years, answering various economic questions for growth in Lanesboro.
Thank you, Bruce.
I'm Colleen Fehrenbacher. I live in Fountain, but I'm the executive director of Eagle Bluff Environmental Learning Center up on the hill. We are an outdoor school that also is open all year round, but we slow down in the winter. So like many of you have said, I think it's a chance to recharge and get ready for the busy season. But I'm with Jason that I'm like really excited about the potential for more tourism in this area right now.
I'm Phil Living, I'm from Lanesboro. Actually, I was born in Lanesboro back once upon a time and left for several years when you could have probably bought the whole downtown for less than $100,000. And then came back after the transition economically. My role here, when I think of winter, I think of like kind of everyone else, quiet, relaxed, late, take a breath. But my role is I'm the chairman of the EDA, Economic Development Authority, and I want to echo a little bit of what Colleen and Jason said. My main concern is having an economic viability year-round, because that hurts a whole bunch of businesses when they got to make it or break it in a certain period of time, and then be able to kind of get to the next cycle of income streams. And then the other concern is housing in Lanesboro. It's a double-edged sword, this beautiful town. We have a lot of houses that sit empty because they've been bought up by people from out of town as a weekend getaway, and it's really crimped the housing opportunities, and we need more housing options so we can have year-round families with kids and economic viability from that.
I'm Rick Lehman.
I'm Joe Getzky. I work up at Eagle Bluff with Colleen. My one word to describe Lanesboro in winter would be snowball.
Joe and I were putting together, I was his orientation leader in college, so bravo, I'm sticking to one word. That is a small world.
All right, Rick, you're up.
Thank you. I'm still reclaiming. We've been here about 41 years. And I have the Stone Mill Suites down there. Yep. And I guess just slower pace. I mean, it's been brought up, whether that's good or bad. It's probably something both. We have to decide where we want to be in that. We want to be slower pace.
My name is Annie, and I live with Rick at Stone Mill. I think winter offers an opportunity to reassess the year and recharge for a busy season. However, I think there is opportunity for growth.
I'm Ryan. Allie and I own the Root River Inn and Suites right next door. And to describe Lanesboro, I would say dormant. There's so much vibrancy here in this community, and I was tempted to say Rockwell as in Norman Rockwell. It's waiting to awaken to more, and doesn't have to be bustling, but I just see so much more.
And I'm Allie Palmer on Root River Inn Suites, and yeah, I think a lot of people have said all the right words, but quiet for good, but also for challenge. So.
I'm Kathy Enerson. I'm EDA director. I get the privilege to come here several times a month and work with Bill and a volunteer group of economic development and community leaders. And my words would be, I love all the words that you used. I would echo many of them, but I like rejuvenate, cash flow, and balance. So those would be my words.
Do you want to share a word? Yes, I'll share a word. And also, besides being the chair of promotion group, I manage the Cottage House Inn in downtown Lanesboro. But yeah, my word would be recharge, definitely.
Recharge.
Yep. And then I'm going to hand it to Anjay because he came in. Don't forget Anjay.
I'm Gonzalez Smith, I'm the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce here. And as I'm thinking and listening, the one word that just comes cautiously is realistic. With all kudos to all the other words, but I think it's important to see that.
Well, I am so grateful for that grounding that you all provided. Clearly, the last few months have given you a chance to think about winter as you're shoveling the drifts and reminded of the weather and things. And you all are so lucky as well to have been able to experience the spring all. So I am joining you all from northern Minnesota. So I live in Park Rapids. I'm from that area. And so I left the tall pine trees and feet of snow to drive south to spring. And I share that with intention because sometimes I think when we're thinking about winter, it's very focused on our version of winter and what that looks like. And so for all of you to be in off season, to me this feels like spring and so many opportunities. To hear all the birds, to wake up to birds this morning, they haven't come quite yet. There's too much snow already. So thank you all for the grounding and for sharing those perspectives of looking for some more opportunity, having that time to reflect and maybe catch up on some projects or dream up some other ones. The region that I'm from mirrors Lanesboro in many ways. So we have a lot of agricultural roots, although our farmland is kind of carved out of the trees. So it's sort of the inverse of this area. But we also have a lot of tourism with the traditional resort culture, living culture. So that sense of that ebb and flow and that seasonality is something that I know, and I have like a physical feeling from hearing that, like, yes, it is all of those and it is needed. Now, in my work with the Tourism Center and with the Community Economics Center as well, with Bruce, we get to see a lot of different communities, and you could, inadvertently say, oh yeah, I've seen them all. We're talking about a small town in Minnesota. I know what this is about. But in an effort to really understand Lanesboro and understand the tasks that we've been asked to, I dug into a lot of the research and reading and trying to understand what does this mean for a seasonal community. And what you all shared is exactly what the research says about what is the resident experience of working and living in a highly seasonal tourism community. There's also some kind of funny parallels too, that like the more of that seasonality means that we kind of miss the tourists by this time of year. And we're excited for them. Like, okay, yeah, you can come back now, that'd be fun. That'd be fun to change up the tempo a little bit. But then by the end of the season, it might be like, okay, you can leave now. I need a break. I need to reset. I need to not work 7 days a week. And so that ebb and flow is something that is very consistent across communities with your kind of economic profile. But that is not to say that as a community that there aren't opportunities and there aren't ways to sort of explore how you could lean into the assets that you have, the infrastructure, the amazing outdoor recreation, the restaurants and things that you already have, and to explore how you might be able to maybe stay in the black over the winter. Even if it's not trying to be at your summer peak, but to say, could we stay in the black? That could be nice. So there's a lot of range that we can talk about. I do want to share a little bit about the Tourism Center. Got all cattywampus. I think this swings. I keep looking over and then it's different than it was. Okay, I won't touch any. Thank you, Bruce. But with the Tourism Center, I think it's really important for you to have a context of our thinking when we're talking about community tourism development. And so our mission is to empower, prepare, and to support communities as you explore tourism development, and really looking to work with you for success and for sustainability. So I do not have a U of M branded crystal ball. I do not have a U of M branded magic tourism wand to bring in and to say this will do exactly the trick. But instead I have like a cool post-it wall we're going to use. We did some fun surveys. I can share some numbers with you. And it's really in your hands as to what you choose to take away from the conversation today, how that leads into the next conversations that you're having together as a community. And I also wanted to mention that that's a big part of why I'm so excited to have the graphic recorder here as well. Because we'll be having a mirror conversation this evening with community members in the hopes that folks that are working this time of day, are able to join in the conversation. And then we'll be able to provide a through line so that we're not hopefully giving that impression of decisions being made behind closed doors or separate from the community. But really trying to reflect that this is like a community grassroots kind of conversation. So at the Tourism Center, we have a few priorities. I think a few of these will make sense to you. So this is kind of the lens that I'm thinking of and the things I'm reading and talking about all the time. Outdoor recreation. Anybody else think about outdoor recreation all the time? Yes, skiing, absolutely. Other folks thinking about workforce education. How do you train these people to work in your businesses? Consumer intelligence, like where do I buy ads? How do I know what cool new wine people want to have? You're always kind of thinking ahead. What information do I have access to? How do I make a decision about how people want to spend their dollars and their time? We have been doing some emergent work on agritourism. So when it came up in the surveys around wanting to preserve a sense of your agricultural roots, that totally makes sense to me. That's something that I think about a lot. And then we also look at we use the phrase future of mobility, but it's kind of that planes, trains, and automobiles, like all the different ways people move around and how communities are connected. So you can see why it makes sense that we would partner with you all. I think that we're thinking about a lot of those same things. I'm not coming in with a package kind of program or a prescription or anything, but this is the context that we're working in. So when we set out and we were approached by the community leaders to explore this opportunity, there were a few goals that we set for Lanesboro. Every community that we do this with, we're going to end up with slightly different goals. And the timeline ended up, because we wanted to get some visitors here in the winter, so we had to kind of work with that timeline. But we've created that inventory of tourism assets. We have had the opportunity through the surveys to actually assess those tourism assets from local folks' perspectives, visitors, and then those expert perspectives. And then really our third goal then is to use that information to discover and report opportunities for winter tourism. And then the fourth is to identify action steps and funding sources. So we are in the midst of this project right now. So this work that we're doing today is actually part of this process in this project. And then in June, we will be doing a couple of presentations for the community around our findings and with those recommendations. And so there are like those three different phases. And so we're in this kind of engagement phase. And then in a couple of months, we'll kind of have everything together. Oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong. It says Discover Ridgefield. I really do know I'm in Lanesboro. I got all the fine print once changed, so I apologize for that. I think what is really important for you to know about our tourism assessment program, though, is that this is a co-created program and process. So I have some information that comes from some of our economic data resources and things, but this community survey and that input is really key. And so we had a huge number of you contribute to that and participate in it from the businesses as well. And then we're hoping to be able to bring some of that industry information kind of back to you as a community. Okay, I think I covered those things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the economic impact pieces of tourism. And I will cover the couple of surveys as well, and then we'll take a morning break. And it sounds like there's treats and things too. So you'll have a chance to kind of like sit with some of that information before we move into the activity. Does that sound good? Okay. I know this is like everybody's favorite part. Talk about economics, right? So, how many of you would be surprised to hear that restaurants are like the largest tourism-related employer? Anybody? Any takers? Nobody. You knew that already. That's kind of the funny thing about getting some of this data together, is that as a community, like, you guys know a lot of this stuff. But we were able to identify, that the restaurants and bars certainly have a significant proportion of jobs related to tourism, accommodations, and that's very clear with the inns in the community. And then you have a few of those like retail stores, some of the museums and cultural sites, and then that miscellaneous store retailers includes things like the Essence of Lanesboro, that type of retail establishment.
Can we ask a question?
You may, yes.
Lanesboro is an arts community. Arts
Yes,
community.
yes.
How do you relate that into your friends?
Yes.
When you talk about it, will you also incorporate
I don't think that I have that information at my fingertips, but I appreciate you asking. So what we were specifically looking for is with some of the tourism categories, and so it does include attractions, and I can't think of the other word on there. So thank you for bringing that up. And then this is the inverse of those things. So looking at it, when you look at the local community, when you look at the local community and think of like, we have so many of all of these different kinds of activities and different things to do, we can actually see that with some of the economic data. And so this is actually looking at something called location quotients. But it's really that idea of how many do you have in relation to other communities of your size, and where, like your museums and historical sites that you're kind of scoring, you have a lot of those. Again, you know those things. And then you also have a lot of accommodations and a lot of places to stay. I work with so many communities that is like their biggest challenge, is that they don't have somewhere for people to stay. They might have great attractions or great things to do, but they're missing out on the overnight stay. And so you guys are doing very, very well in that regard. And then similarly, having like clothing stores in a small community is notable, as well as the number of restaurants and bars and other retailers. So in many ways, when you guys have that sense of like, yeah, we have a lot to offer, we have a lot going on. Yes, you do, and it shows up in that data. Related to that though, I mean, these are dramatics. Right? Our data is going to be dramatic for a while here, and I'm sorry, I mean, you guys this way, but I mean, what happened here, right? Like, but when we're looking at kind of that percent change around community spending, this is really important when we're thinking about what are those trends, how are your visitors behaving, what matters, to those visitors, and people vote with their dollars. That you can tell a lot about what people are interested in doing or where they're interested in going based on what they're spending. And so this is actually comparing a couple of different key indicators. So the one is on recreational goods and vehicles, so more of the hard goods, and then the other is on recreational services. So this includes things like tours. So there's kind of that difference. Is somebody going to buy a kayak or buy a thing that's a durable good or buy a bike? Or are they paying for services? And so you can see with the yellow, that with those recreation services, that the pandemic had a huge hit. You guys felt that, didn't you? Like tours, oh, well, the liquor store owner is. You might get voted off the island. We'll give you a pass. We'll give you a pass. But anybody that's operating a tour or has like an upsell, like, yes, stay here and we'll also give you a little tour for an additional charge. Like all that is gone, during the pandemic. But then clearly there was a bump in that spending, that people had, a high desire to get outside and to go and do things. And then that has kind of tapered off. It's interesting to note, though, that this is like the best data that we have available, but in 2021, that there was still some kind of raised interest in that recreational services. This information, though, is sort of like, because this is about the United States, and that's different than like for Lanesboro in particular.
That's what I see.
Oh, and so this is kind of looking at some of those like bigger trends and what's happening. So a community like yours may parallel this. You may have felt that. But there may be some elements as well that you may be buffered from, partially because of your brand as a community, as a tourism community. That if people are coming here to do things, to go outdoors, to go on Amish tours, that by the time they're coming here, they've already decided that we're spending money on a fishing guide, on an Amish tour, we're doing these things. I think where there's a challenge then is making sure that they're still choosing to come to Lanesboro in the first place, and that you're on their radar as they're making decisions to spend money in this way.
So 2020, quarter one, quarter two is the big drop, which happens to be indoors, beginning of the pandemic. People were really super cautious.
Yes.
It seems that we can't learn a lot from that drop. In terms of, I mean, it's just impacted so much by what was going on health-wise.
Okay.
Okay.
So Vicki had a question to say that this drop was kind of that first quarter, second quarter of 2020, so right with the lockdown and pandemic world, and then that it bounced back up. And just wondering, like, is there anything to learn from that? So when I look at this, what it makes me think of are those moments, like in April, I'm like, I did all this, is anybody gonna come? And where you may have to kind of dig down and have some faith around, like, yes, the tourists will come back. Yes, they will spend money. Yes, we can pay our bills. To see that dip and then like, oh, there was that much pent up demand. People still wanted to do that. To me, this gives me faith that if there are continued bumps, that there's, I think, a reason to believe that it will come back. Even if in the moment, it can feel really hard and can be really devastating for individual businesses. So when you're thinking about making investments as a community, like, should we be adding more tours? Should we be doing these things? Should we be looking for more guide service opportunities and things? This tells me that the services are resilient, even if they took a big hit during COVID.
I think one thing to, on the number, Dee, I can point out.
Yes,
is
please.
This is the change. That, don't look at it and say, oh, spending dropped and then spending really went up. This is the change from the previous quarter. So, we had a 40% drop and then we recovered 20%. So don't imagine that as real dollars, it is the change.
Thank you. And then similarly with restaurants as well, that's a similar kind of bump that, sorry, I am totally in your way here. But with that change from the pandemic and then to have that recover in some regards, and then over time, our most recent data with 2021, that it's kind of even back out. So I suspect that your restaurant owners in the room felt that as well, that there were really big drops and changes, a bit like riding a roller coaster. But that what we're anticipating is that there will continue to be, that demand, and that people, that your investment in your restaurants and your dining establishments is worthwhile. And then I wanted to share one other kind of context thing. Totally away. So this is actually a totally different tool. So the other data comes from some of our economic resources where you have to wait a year, whatnot, for the numbers to come in. And this is on the full other end of the spectrum, and it's actually measuring mobile data devices. And so I was actually able to go and take a peek at downtown Lanesboro and say, what does traffic look like? So again, I think you guys know this, don't you? If we're just looking at traffic of mobile devices and people having their cell phones on in downtown Lanesboro, it's pretty busy in October still. There's some energy in town. And then what happens? It just gets quiet quick, doesn't it? Are you glad for that? Oh, thank goodness. Yes. Maybe part of you, I see some head shaking. Do you dread that every year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not making it, you're spending it.
Yeah, absolutely. So is this a graph of where you feel like you're in the red? Now we have to draw out of the accounts instead of being able to pay bills from your take. So this is not a one-to-one count of your visitors at all, but it is a nice way to capture some of what you all know is already happening. So to say, yep, there's a lot of activity, and it does go down from into October, but then it just kind of falls off and is quiet from there. So this is your whole like cozy, restorative, thinking too much. Yes. And then it picks up again kind of in late April as well. So any other questions, just kind of thinking about some of those like bigger trends, because otherwise we can jump into what your community actually said about yourself. Yeah.
Yes, as I look around, I don't see color. There's color. Okay. I'm not sure it's clear in your statistics the big effect of the arts in our town, and economically, real estate, is owned by our two major arts groups. We also have smaller arts groups, which they started one, and it has an outsized impact compared to other small towns by quite a bit. So we need to remember this. I don't see anybody from Conwell, but we're talking, employees. We're talking many people who I run into in the cities where I'm originally from, who, they know Lanesboro, and oftentimes they'll say, you have a big theater there. So, I'd like to see that reflected a little more in this.
Well, and I appreciate that feedback. I know I have some of that information. I don't have it like right at my fingertips, so I can go back and add it to this weekly conversation. So, and that will be part of our conversation here. I will say some components of the arts can be really hard for this, and we know that. You think of what is the value and the dollar inflation. So I appreciate you sharing that. Others?
Is it possible to get that graph of traffic for a whole year? That's
Yes. It's brutal.
But it would be nice to see. Like, it'd be nice to see the whole spectrum.
That's great. I am happy to have that. That mobile data is such a rabbit hole of what pictures I could show you or what usefulness it has. So I appreciate that.
Well,
it's a new tool that we're using. So
we were looking at, with the business group, we plan events, right, that affects a lot of us and bring people in. And some of those peaks in there, it would be nice to see if those overlap our dates of special events and how many people were actually contributing.
And they seem to. It seemed like Lovebirds in Lanesboro and Cabin Fever, two of the peaks that I noticed, were about 1,000, 1,500 people more than what the other times. So that's helpful.
It could be useful.
Mm-hmm. I have found with the mobile data is we've had a tool available to us for the last 18 months or so. I think that sounds right. It is most helpful if you have a specific question. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. Okay.
Did everyone understand what we were talking about there?
Oh, do you need me with the mobile data?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys tell where I spend a whole bunch of time? So you can just blame it on Bruce that he said yes to my crazy idea. But one of the big things happening in tourism marketing and promotion is around the use of mobile data and location data from devices. So if you are using maps, and you have location turned on your phone or whatever, it's pinging to all kinds of satellites and basically creating a little digital map of where you've been. There are a lot of different applications for it. I am very hesitant, and we have not found a tool that we would be comfortable saying this is the head count. So it's not something that you would say, this number tells you how many people came in. Old school, tickets at the door, sign-ins, all of that are by far and away the best way to count for your groups. But what it does do is it provides some help for being able to measure some of those ebbs and flows. We're also exploring how it can help measure how people move through your community and how they're connected. So we're still exploring some of those uses for it. And sometimes I feel like I have that aha, and there are cases that we've been able to find that, and other places it still feels kind of mushy. One of my big motivations for digging into that software is that you all, I'm sure your city administrator tell you too, but there's so many for-profit companies selling this stuff, and they will sell it for like $20,000 to the community. And so as researchers and academics, there's kind of that question of like, is it worth anything? Like, what do we do with it? So that's what we've been really tinkering with, is trying to help understand it. So I will pull in that other graph today, and we can certainly talk about it further.
So, quick question before you leave that topic. So does that data really indicate kind of a measure of opportunity because it's measuring presence? Or
No, not necessarily.
But it's tracking the existence of people that are using their.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that sense, it's a measure of presence, right?
So here's an example of where I found it to be useful for a community, that they held a big festival, but on a day where their restaurants aren't open. And so you could see the traffic for the festival grounds and then see that nobody was downtown. And that's a nice sort of reflection of like, that's fine if you don't want to be open on Sundays. That's not my decision. But to know that there's that traffic there and then you're making a choice. So does that change if we're going to host a festival, we should do it on a Saturday? Or that we should collaborate and open the restaurants?
Or you find out people who've been exercising at the YMCA go to the malt shop after being at the YMCA.
Yeah, I found people go to Taco John's after. After the YMCA. So, there's just quirky things. And whether or not that is, statistically relevant or whatever, but you get a sense of that interconnectedness of places and where they might be opting out. So, for the purposes of this project, we are doing more of that traffic level kinds of questions. And then there may be some questions that come up from the conversations today that I'm able to go back and ask that of the tool and include it in our findings. But that's still meant to be determined. Yes?
Do you have a tool that goes even further to say, okay, well, I'll just take La Crosse is having, or Rochester is having a big festival. You tracked it, so now if the information comes to us, is that the time that we do geofencing? We're marketing to Rochester just at one time that they have so many tourists, or La Crosse, at one time that they have so many tourists. So that's the best place to spend your money when you're marketing to tourism. Are you able to relate that at all, or that's just a whole other rabbit hole, like you said?
Oh, and even bigger. So that's where the destination marketing organizations, like Visit Lanesboro and similar ones, will have kind of a slightly different tool with that kind of capability and intention. So there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of possibilities and things out there. I think one of our challenges in this work is to kind of move from that what could be, what is possible, what is happening across the country, to kind of bringing it back down and just saying, what is happening here? What do we care about here? So there are some universal things around visitors People need a place to sleep. They need bathrooms. They need food. So there are lots of those pieces that you can sort of extrapolate. Just say, yep, no matter where they are, people will need these things and they will make decisions based on it. So it was great this morning walking around to see that you have a public restroom at your visitor center. That's amazing. Because people will leave a community if they can't find a bathroom. Like those basic things. So even if I'm using like a mobile data tool, that's the kind of thing that will show up. So that downtown had a quiet day, quick trip, super busy. The same day. But what do they have? They have bathrooms, they have food. So regardless of the tool, a lot of the time it's that level of community aha that we're going to be looking for. So I think that today the community survey responses are going to give you an opportunity to kind of explore that further and to think about like what your community is saying. So we did a community survey and then there was also a business survey. Very, very similar, but there are some slightly different questions that are asked within it. And so I know a number of you wear multiple hats and may have even chosen to complete both, and that's great because they do have slightly different questions. So with this survey, pre-COVID world, it used to be administered in a paper form. And so it was distributed and collected and entered and all of these things. One of the silver linings for us in COVID world was moving it online. And we've seen consistently like, really positive increases in the number of community members that have contributed to the surveys that we've administered in this way. So that's exciting for us to see because we want to have your community members included in this conversation. We had, once we kind of looked at any of the surveys that had been opened but weren't completed, there were 134 total completed surveys that were received, which is a really strong response rate for this type of survey in your community. And then because of the nature of the program, that it's including Lanesboro and also Welland, that we asked specifically like which community are you coming from, just to be able to kind of check what sort of responses, are from different places, is there consistency, all of those things. And so overall, as you can see in the burgundy there, the vast majority of the responses were from Lanesboro, and then in the gold, that's the area outside of those city cores. So really, like, they're residents and immediate neighbors. And then 6% of respondents were seasonal. 3% were from, is it Wayland? Wayland. Okay, long A. And then 3% were other. And we include that just to make sure that we're kind of catching, that people can identify themselves, even if they're like a friend of the community. And then the survey really kind of goes through a number of different key values around tourism development, and that's what we're really asking about. And so we ask questions, really trying to get at understanding, what are those benefits and costs to the community, looking at opportunities for diversification and that interest, asking questions around the quality and the perceived quality of those tourism offerings. We're also seeking some shared benefits for the community, and so there are questions kind of aiming at trying to understand what does tourism mean for your family, what does it mean as a business owner, what kind of impact does it have, and then also seeking to identify some opportunities that have some authenticity to them, that feel like they're of a place, they feel connected to your community.
Could you explain that top one a little bit better?
Yes. So that's one of our kind of values, but around having a commitment to really looking at We use the phrase true benefits and costs. So let's say somebody had an idea to plot Disney World into Lanesboro in December. And we could come up with all kinds of economic charts and just say, look at this, you would bring in all these millions of dollars of revenue, and wouldn't it be wonderful? And do you guys have a physical reaction to that? Because I feel like, as a community member, just that idea of like, really? Like, really? I have other projects I need to get to. I don't have any staff. Like, I can't keep working 7 hours or 7 days a week. Like, okay. And that feeling, that energy, that's a cost. So we could say, yep, you'd make a ton of money doing this, but those costs are really important. So the questions on the survey, around, what are your priorities? What are your concerns? What are challenges that come up because of tourism? Drawbacks? That's what we're trying to get at, or making sure that we're also accounting for those things. So when we looked at community members' goals, and we asked specifically, like, what are your priority goals for winter tourism? There were a number of different kinds of categories that they fit into. And so you were asked about, local economy, preserving natural areas, improving quality of life, employment opportunities, and then improved recreation facilities. And these were the categories that your group really highlighted that were important to them. And so each of these colors represents if they were a first priority, a second priority, or a third priority. So anybody see what's the top one? Look at that, it's like far and away. That's actually that vital local economy. That's what ranked so high up there. And when I dug into it a little bit, what's really interesting too is that the more local the respondent, the higher this rating was. Again, that fits with research and tourism development. That is what we would expect. But it's also interesting to see, that those other pieces are very balanced beyond that. This difference here, this burgundy of that top priority, those are residents saying that this is your top priority. So something that I appreciate about this, when we're talking about a local economy though, is when it is paired with things like quality of life, that outdoor recreation, preserving the community. And it really showed up in the comments that people shared as well. That people wanted to see that strong economy and to see people doing well and able to have a life here, but in balance with these other components and not at the expense of. So some of the phrases and things that came up repeatedly from your local residents was really looking for strong local businesses. That was important to your residents. Year-round activity. That was often in the context of residents wanting something to do year-round and have options of how to spend their free time. Expanding recreational activities, and very similarly, that this was about residents having something to do, but also being interested in highlighting the beautiful outdoors and the opportunities that winter recreation brings. There was very consistent language around wanting a vibrant community for residents, and that word vibrant was very, very consistent, which is always interesting to me to pay attention to, because not every community would use that word. There are different things that show up, but vibrant really stood out. That's people were thinking of. And then, again, very consistent of looking to preserve that rural charm of the community. And not necessarily like bringing in something, that's like this outside change kind of thing, but more growing, preserving what is Lanesboro. So, as I mentioned though, that one of our goals with this was to make sure that we were also kind of unearthing some of those challenges and costs that the community may perceive. And so we had asked specifically around the top priority concerns that people have around tourism growth, for winter tourism growth in particular. So very consistent concern was around environmental impacts. And what is the sustainability for the physical, the trails and the outdoors, and that cost. A concern about higher taxes and increased housing costs, and those were often linked, really wanting to see year-round residents as well. Overdevelopment and traffic congestion. And that overdevelopment often is paired with a sense of not being able to have housing for people to live here year-round. And so some of the concerns were, around like the closed businesses. That phrasing feels odd now. The burnt out businesses, but I think it means burnt out business owners. Noise and light pollution, and wanting to be mindful of that. And then also the concern about unpredictable weather. And, if you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and then it doesn't snow, or it snows too much, what does that do? And then the last kind of summary piece that I'll share around some strategies to grow tourism that we identified. And this was just through like coding the community responses and say like, what are the themes? What are things kind of bringing up? There was a big group that were interested in creating new activities. And this oftentimes paired with things for local residents to do, as well as to invite visitors to attend. So seasonal events, ice skating, lots of like outdoor rec kinds of things, and then sports races and tournaments. There was another kind of bucket around growing what already exists, and to lean into the skiing and snowshoeing trails, to really take advantage of the great local businesses that are here, and to find ways for them to be able to be open more, and then also with the arts and theater scene. And then the other category was around addressing those existing barriers. So that perception that the closed businesses made it harder to invite people and to bring in tourists to the community, as well as to actually like take advantage of having visitors here and to give them a place to spend their money. And then the second piece was opportunities for information for visitors, especially around the experience that can be expected in off-season. So not necessarily so much the signage, or an information center, but more of planning your visit type of information. So clearly with the results kind of work in a couple of months, we will have a lot more of this information available for you. So rest assured, you will have all of that you could possibly want. Are there any questions about the community meeting or a community survey or things that stood out to you? That feeling of like, we already know this. That's actually a good sign. That means that as a community, the things that you're hearing are like conversations over coffee about tourism in the community. That's great to have it be consistent. if that word on the street is consistent with an actual survey, that's anonymous, people could put in whatever they want. If those things match, great. That's very, very positive. Yes?
I was a little surprised by the top concern being environmental impact. I mean, it's good, but I was surprised because I feel like our big partners who help us with environmental impact aren't at the table yet. Like the DNR, I don't know, soil and water. You know, it's not always at our forefront. We might be doing things in our business practice that are trying to be eco-friendly. We have one day of river cleanup or trash cleanup in town, but it's just not at the forefront yet. So that was interesting. We can get those voices on the table too.
Yes, yes. Well, and I'll make a note as well to look at that. So one of the pieces with environmental impacts, to me, I'm like, that could mean a lot of things.
Right.
So I'm going to go back and just confirm that sort of angle and concern. Because even if our survey didn't go into depth about what exactly do they mean by this, that can also be an invitation to say, hey, we need to ask some more questions if this is a consistent concern. So, yeah.
If we recall, that was part of the multiple choice, correct? So having environmental impacts is one of your options, and maybe environmental protection is a strong value of yours, then you might go, oh, this is always a thing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily specific to when you're
Yeah. Like, kind of just wondering, is it specific to winter tourism?
Right.
Or, yes. So I'll ask more of those questions, and that's great to have. So, yes, Bruce.
I would like to try to get your impression when you looked at the answers that where they said higher taxes. Was it that they were concerned that their property tax would go up, or was it that the city would want to get more money to help develop winter tourism? Or do we have any idea on what they were thinking when they answered higher tax?
Again, I'm happy to just go back and double check those pieces. But my impression of it was that the higher taxes was actually kind of increased with that, like housing costs, and just that feeling of being sensitive to pushing people out, pushing residents out. And it was mentioned in the kind of opening round robin as well around housing being available, and then if it's purchased and then is sitting empty for weekend use, that kind of tension. So those things were consistent from my read on it, but I'll double check.
Yeah, I think some of it was also, at least a number of years ago, discussion was the streets were wearing down faster because of the number of tourists, and therefore we were having to replace streets, improve streets more often than wasn't being reimbursed by visitors.
I don't know that streets were included in this, or like the people brought up streets. But hearing him say that, does that resonate with you all? Of like a concern about the cost of streets and the replacement of them in wear and tear?
Does, but then at the same time, they're paying more sales taxes and lodging tax.
And they're contributing.
That's a small percentage compared to property tax and the levy. So when you consider the impact on infrastructure, the impact on purchasing services, things of that nature, that even the sewer treatment plant, we had to build a bigger sewer treatment plant to occupy the need for the influx of people in the summer compared to the 12 months. So that's a huge effect on the decisions of government in Lanesboro. Huge effect.
There's another factor too that might have played into it that's just sort of an anomaly that happened just recently is Fillmore County got a new assessor came in, and there were a lot of properties that were 50-60% of market value. They shoved everything up, which is law, which is right, to 93 to 105% of market value, and as a result, a lot of people's property values went up 40, 50%, and a lot of people's taxes followed that. So they saw a large surge in their tax burden, and it was, again, I call it sort of an anomaly, and it should level out after a while, I hope.
Well, that is some insider knowledge if I've ever heard it. Thank you for that.
And I think there was a lot of work being done on pipes under the streets at the same time that this survey went out to the community, and streets were torn up. People couldn't, they were walking through mud, and they were not finding sidewalks available. And that maybe brought those issues top of mind just because of the timing. Again, another anomaly that may have been a factor. That continues until, the weather gets just a little bit better, and then we'll be looking good.
Could I ask, does anybody know if that pipe work also came with like assessments?
Yes.
And of course, there's more projects that are coming that will result in this.
There you go. I think we may have figured that out. Thank you. Perfect. Well, that just highlights the beauty of getting this together. There's only so far we can go with that information. Any other thoughts or comments or anything? Yeah.
Do you remember the slide that there was one kind of a bar chart where you had like existing activities, ones we can promote, including snowshoeing and skiing?
Yep.
See that? Ice skating was on there. And what we had done years ago was promote what we call the silent sports, and I kind of see that reflected in this slide too. But I think sports races, maybe be foot races, not motorcycle races. And that's it.
Thank you. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what others were thinking when they answered the environmental impact question, but I know what I was thinking, and that is that since 1985, when I've been coming here, 10 years of living here, I have seen the climate change, and I see, a community that had a lot of snow. I'm from southern Minnesota originally, and this is true of the rest of southern Minnesota as well. Used to have a lot of snow, have a lot of opportunities for winter activities. Those have really reduced, and that is an environmental impact, not of tourism, but on tourism, I guess is what I was thinking. And sort of activities that once were popular and possible in the winter now are maybe less so because of this climate change. And so that's what I had in my mind.
Is that something other folks agree with?
Or
There's like difference of snow cover and sort of things. So one thing about change is that sometimes there can be positives, there can be growth, but it always involves loss. Always. With that change of snow cover, are there differences that you see in like outdoor recreation? Are there changes?
The snowmobiling has definitely declined. River Trail goes right by us, and there's hardly been a lot that's gone by. And we've had more snow than some other years, but it's just not conducive by the time we can get it groomed. And the slugs get out there. it's melting and it's not a good surface to be on.
The snow doesn't make a difference, I would say it's very minimal. I tell people, we have one cross-country skier for every fall in my years.
Yeah.
It's not, that's all we say.
So you're also seeing a worldwide decline in outdoor recreation in general, right? So it's a complicated issue. Yes, weather is definitely the amount of participation, increasing participation, there you go, is impacting participation, which is why I think it's really important to think about creating new events that don't rely on the amount of snowfall.
Oh, sure.
Dee Dee, I'm kind of surprised given our relationship to Rochester and our healthy that we don't have more about our relaxing, rejuvenating, and being able to stay here in things as a new activity. So whether it's a spa or whether it's a corporate retreats, small business retreats, etc., as ways to attract people that's not related to the snow or road conditions definitely a factor, but the weather is bad. But Jonathan's gaming event was really unique. So it was completely creative. And then the fact that we had a show.
Yes. Anything else? Thank you for that. That kind of shift from maybe where snowmobiling isn't something that can be consistently done, but that there's some opportunity around cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and also winter biking. And then asked about other kind of relaxing oriented things. So relaxing and rejuvenating, like a spa or corporate retreats, are there things that maybe take advantage of that winter season, but maybe aren't reliant on snow? Those are really
on this cross-country skiing. I've been skiing that trail for 20 years, and I've seen the calling in the number of people that ski, but part of it is because even in Minnesota, the zones of climate are so different, and people in the Twin Cities, this affects the North Shore as well. You know, if people in the Twin Cities don't see snow, they don't think to check unless they're avid skiers and are on skinny ski all the time. They don't think to check, well, is it the same in the North Shore? Is it the same in southern Minnesota? So I've been thinking, what could I do? I mean, I could be a better advocate. I could go on skinny ski and say, I had a fabulous experience, which, you know, in January skiing was great. And I thought, why am I not telling people where people want to know that information? I could do that.
telling people where
and when, and it's a very dynamic thing.
And I'm curious, because we're relatively new to the community. Was cross-country skiing ever strong here?
Question
I know
was,
it exists, but was it ever strong?
let's see.
Not for us, not for guests that came to our place in the winter.
1,000 to 1 is pretty accurate.
But it's strong enough that the DNR does groom the trail.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. We had guests who told us, you know, call up and find out what the conditions are that day, and then I'm going to drive down and ski. We are close enough, of course.
And I asked, we're open year round. We had one guest in the winter call specifically because they wanted to go cross-country skiing. We had to call a few people to find out was it groomed yet, and got the scoop once someone saw the grooming machine go by, you know. But thank you.
Well, I think those are really great examples of the kinds of questions that as this project and process moves forward as a community that you'll have to keep asking yourselves. What was the existing culture? Was that, you know, kind of across the board? Did everybody ski? Or are there some kind of lanes where people have, deep attachment to certain activities, but maybe it's not across the board. And then also certainly looking ahead at weather conditions and thinking about, if your goal is to build some sustainable, predictable tourism traffic in your community, having that connected to snow maybe isn't something that you all feel really confident in. And so to your point about like winter biking and things, there are lots of other opportunities. There are lots of other things that can be consistently promoted. But just thinking of like, what is your comfort? That you don't want people to be all packed up, ready for snow, and then show up and, it's like White Christmas. Have you guys all seen that movie? They're like singing on the train about the snow, and I'm being video recorded and will not sing for you. And then they show up, the doors to the train open, there's no snow. We don't want that to be, Lanesboro in the winter experience. So that piece of like deciding where you're going to go and what you're promoting, I think absolutely plays into that sustainability. I know I'm between you all in a coffee break, so I want to share a couple of these pieces, and then there'll be time to kind of talk, and when we come back, I'll address questions too. The business survey, I think, is a little bit more straightforward in some regards. We had 47 total responses, which was really, really outstanding, especially for this to be sent out in the off-season. So we're very pleased to see that. And then this diagram kind of illustrates the wide variety of businesses that were included in this. And so there's the largest one is accommodations, the burgundy, the yellow, 21% is retail sales, the blue, 19% are service businesses, followed by entertainment, other restaurants and bars, and professional offices. So a really nice showing of a variety of businesses in your community. And then this is really great to see that 91% of your businesses are optimistic about their future in Lanesboro. So, and from what they shared, that the burgundy is that they're expecting things that are going to be kind of the same as last year. The yellow is better than last year. And then just 15% are thinking that it may be worse than last year.
Do you know of that 15% what type of business that was?
We can look at that on the back end of the data. And so I would be happy to, when we go back and to look at that. Thank you. So part of, I should have said this earlier. So part of this like compressed process with the survey is that we like maximized how much time we can have the survey out to all of you, and then that compresses like our analysis time. And so there's some of that like secondary layer of analysis that will continue to be going on. But because of the timeline of the project, in order to fit it in, so that you guys have the information to make choices for next winter, that was just a kind of a requirement. So when we asked, about what are some of the most influential factors that affect business development? If there are any realtors in the audience, like you all know this, that the top one is location. See it? There's always. But absolutely location being the most important. And, both as a positive factor, but also where it can be a negative factor. When you think of that, if you're in the wrong spot or not a great match for your business type, it can really be a challenge to overcome. There's also definitely concern around the market and the economy for being, sort of that high risk, I would say, when business owners responded around their business development. And so that second one, keep in mind the burgundy are the negative factors, and then the yellow are positive factors. So there's really that sense of like, if there's something, that happens with the economy or the business market, that will cause a lot of, that will impact that ability around business development. Competition, adequate space, adequate facilities, labor availability, those things were a little bit smaller. One of the kind of notable things is that labor availability is only seen as a negative. Clearly not having people available is not good for that business option. And this is specifically looking at winter. So like, what are those challenges that you're having? And so that is a legitimate concern around, if we're promoting the community, do we have people to work? Are we able to be open? And what does that look like? We also asked about kind of ways that people are advertising their businesses. And I think this will be really helpful with Anjay and the chamber, and thinking about tools like the mobile data and other resources too that may be available to expand or explore. And so the top way that folks are advertising is online. Other folks are using the tourism guidebook, brochures, newspapers, cooperative advertising through Explore Minnesota, and then, cooperative advertising and the state tourism marketing. So that can be through some of their purchasing programs or their online listings that are available. And of note, so I have this beautiful brochure. Any guesses where I found it?
The tourism office?
No. At the Excel Center.
Really?
Yes.
Where did you say?
At the Excel Center.
Was our fishing guide up there doing?
Nope. Nope. I haunt brochure racks like nobody's business. I cannot walk by a brochure rack without paying attention to what's on it. But yes, so through your marketing partner, that those things get placed in those brochure racks. And it was also kind of cool because there were a lot of other communities that I don't know if any of their stuff had moved, and I think I took the last one, so sorry, not sorry. But I think midwinter, this looks very appealing. But there are certainly opportunities, even with this, for thinking about that winter tourism.
Before you do that, was there like a genre of business that did not use the internet? Do you know?
That's a good question. So we can look at that on the back end.
And then what type of use in the internet? Was it just the website? Were they on Facebook? Were they doing other social media, Twittering, Instagram? It would be kind of interesting to know.
Kind of looks like the rear top or on the left there, booking site ads, Google ads, social media, right?
Oh, Google.
Okay.
Those were additional fill-in things, if they expanded on it. And so yes, these are in that category. So social media presence, booking site ads, Google ads, Chamber of Commerce, and event sponsorship. And then when asked about the impact of tourism and the importance of tourism, so businesses shared that on average, winter tourism accounts for 11% of their annual revenues. And that 78% felt that winter tourism promotion would benefit their business. So that's a significant number, interested in that. And then when you look at that importance of tourism, just broadly for these businesses, that a very large majority said that it was very important for their business, and that it was just a small amount between somewhat important and not important. That was only 16%. So it really goes to show that the tourism activity in the community is very meaningful for the businesses that are here. Is there a question? Okay. And then when asked about their beliefs on tourism, 93% felt that it should be encouraged to have more tourists come to the area. 87% believe that the overall benefits outweigh the negative impacts. And then 69% find that tourism increases their household standard of living.
If I was a tourist, I'd feel very wanted. I really would. Some people think, oh, well, maybe the community doesn't want us here, but this would make me feel very wanted.
For sure, you guys would like your dollars.
Yeah, that's at least the business side.
No. Maybe we don't want them to talk so much in the winter. And I say that because, like, you're absolutely right that the businesses do want those dollars and would like to see more, but there's some tension in there. And in some of the comments, there were things of like, oh, like, I know I could do more, but I also need this time to rest. And that's sort of like, oh, what am I committing to? How do I have a balance there? Yes, yes. So very much an interest in like measured growth. I would not say that the business respondents were saying, yeah, absolutely, turn the faucet all the way on universally, but they also express that kind of tension. And certainly that comes up with workforce as well. That to say, if I was open more, I would have to be the one working all the time. And that's hard when you're looking ahead to the summer season.
I was actually surprised on your graph about labor,
Mm-hmm.
that it was 9%, and that it was really low compared to some of the other concerns that were.
Yeah.
You know,
Here, I'll bring that back up.
You know, that location.
You were there.
You were there.
There. Okay.
The location and the market economy are higher negative factors even than labor availability.
So it's possible that the businesses skew a little bit more toward owner-operators. I think your business community is, a lot of owner-operators, but also for who is responding this time of year. So they may not have as high of need for labor.
And there was only 3 restaurants that responded.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but if you're talking about restaurants and wait staff and all of that, your back of house staff, which I know, in my area, I mean, that's the make it or break it.
But I think there's also maybe more labor available because people are being laid off from their jobs because they're seasonal. That there's people wanting to work in the winter because of jobs.
Did you guys hear that question? Like, is there more labor available
During winter.
in the winter?
We teach a lot of students, so they're in school.
Do other folks have a sense that there might be people looking for a little work in the winter? Yeah? I know in my area, that kind of thing is true, but it comes with like a great big asterisk of that person may also be doing drop off and pick up from school. They may have other kinds of duties that just say, yes, I would like to work more, but I have fewer hours available. And have a narrow window of when they can work. Or that your staff may also be looking for that time of respite as well. That they may be concerned if they say yes, is that going to turn into 50 hours and 7 days a week? Or are they able to say yes in a narrow commitment? Where it's just a few days a week or it kind of fits their lifestyle needs. So that's a good question, and that may be something that you all have to explore a little bit too. But, what is the available workforce? And what are those concerns or constraints that they may have? But I would say that I think that your group is more owner-operated than other communities that we work with, like the scale of your businesses. And then as far as the development areas and winter tourism attractions to be developed, the recreation and trails came up as a top area, potentially like festivals and the arts came up as being of interest. Cultural attractions and then historic attractions as well as being some opportunities. And there were some specific call-outs as well around expanding winter recreational activities, and then new festivals or seasonal events as well came up in this group. The community did also kind of bring that up around festivals and events, but it was much more activity oriented than to say like one big festival. Than to say we'd like more to do all the time versus one big thing that we do. So that's just a little snapshot of the findings. I really appreciate your questions and then some of the questions around, you know, which businesses answer that way. And I've taken notes and we'll be able to add that to our kind of final analysis piece. So are there initial questions here? Otherwise, I think we need a coffee break. Although I don't know how to say that in Norwegian because I feel like I should use like the accurate terminology. What was it?
I need to defer to Phil.
How you call for coffee, though? Go ahead and have a coffee.
Yes, we should have a cup of coffee. Thank you. I appreciate it. So if you have questions, feel free to ask me one-on-one, and then when we come back, I'll touch base on that too. Okay? Thank you. So go ahead and have a cup of coffee now.
So one question is, who the heck came up with this idea?
Do you like it?
Kristen used to work for us. So we
Oh. I have no idea. So, were there any other questions or things that came up that we need to kind of get covered before we jump in? Good? Okay, so for the remainder of our time today before lunch, we get to go kind of back into that like information gathering mode. So now that we've talked about some of the data and like what could be and things that are in the community's minds, I want to make sure that we're kind of capturing what is on your minds at this point. And what are some of the ideas that maybe have come up, or I wonders, or things that you want to spend some more time on. So what we're going to do is an activity called SOAR activity, and that stands for Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations, and Results. So you'll notice not all of you, these front tables don't have cards, because what I'd like you to do is to actually join the table behind you. And then same, you guys can kind of pull together to make a group. And we're going to go through just a question for each of these topics. And I would like you to use the card to jot down the things that are on your group's mind. And then we will actually place them together here. This is like a reverse post-it. So when we're done with one question, we'll be able to post it up here. And then it just gets placed on there. That magic. I still don't have a magic wand or a crystal ball, so but I can do a little spray of post-its. So we will be able to actually kind of bring those things together and have a quadrant to look at, where we can look at the group's kind of strengths that are on your mind, those opportunities, aspirations, and the results that would kind of help us know that we accomplished something for growing winter tourism in the community.
I'm confused. So what would be an example of something we would have out there?
How about, let's start with the first question. And I will answer your question, but with kind of an example of this. So then as a group, the first question will be, what can we build on? So that could be a physical attribute. That could be something about your community or the buildings, but it could also be about the things that were shared in the room. Maybe that word cozy stood out to you and is something you would like to explore further. Or it could be about community groups and interest groups that you're aware of that you could build on. So you'll be able to respond and talk as a group, and then I will, flail my arms dramatically and things to indicate that time. But so I'll give you probably like 5 minutes for each question. So there'll be time for you to talk as a group, and then certainly you'd be welcome to continue to add things to those areas as you have more ideas kind of come up. This is definitely like a snowball sort of activity, that the more you get kind of warmed up, then it'll keep going. So, and then you'll notice with some of the notes and things too, that as those ideas are shared and talked about, that they'll kind of show up with our notes as well. So after each question, we'll share out from the groups where you can each share one of the things on your minds. We'll get them posted, we'll share one thing, and then move on to the next question. So it'll go fast, and then we'll come back together briefly before lunch. Sound good? Other questions? Yes?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, some of the things that you might consider strengths might be already ones that you already think about during your summer tourism, like your location compared to Rochester. That's a strength. You've got a big population, 50 minutes, 45 minutes away from here. So that's a strength. And you recognize it in the summer. Okay, how can you build on that now for the winter? Opportunity, as I was mentioning to someone, I did a quick search on the internet on snowball throwing contests. I can't find any community that is doing a snowball throwing contest. What if you held the state snowball throwing contest, and during a Norwegian festival, as someone added onto the idea, that how far you can throw the snowball, how accurate you can throw the snowball. But hey, once upon a time we had the national plowing contest in between Casson and Dodge Center. What if you had the national snowball throwing, or at least the state snowball throwing contest in Lanesboro? Just thinking, take ideas that are from other things, like Michigan has the pit spitting contest.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yeah. So for us in the winter, maybe it's snowballs, but just be thinking about ideas. And don't be afraid of stealing ideas from other places.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions before we go? Okay. So I would like, usually I do this kind of thing with like round tables where you might have like 6 people or so in a group. And so if you want to kind of turn so that you have a little bit of a group together and you can see each other. And then there may be some folks that if you wanted to move up to this table or something. And then you'll be with the same group for our time.
Oh my gosh. You're 3/4 of our visitors.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we're like an event week.
That doesn't look like
so I would love for like one idea to get shared from each group, and then we'll post the cards up in this kind of quadrant there. So we could have one person share from each group, and then if it takes a couple people to bring cards up or whatever, do that. And then we'll get settled again. I'll set another timer and give you another question. Okay?
We picked one. So one of our strengths that we can build on is our awesome city facilities. So public infrastructure, like our bathrooms, our showers, our campground. And then also we have, one of the best chambers in the region, I believe, for our size of community.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I owned it as an outsider.
Well, one idea is to expand on our Norwegian heritage, because there's a lot of winter Norwegian activities and festivals. So maybe a Norwegian fest and try a couple weekends or some special events and expand on that.
Comment and ran with it. That is exactly kind of thing. Now, this is a Swedish tradition, so don't chase me out. But there is actually a Swedish tradition around going and watching the cows get let out of the barn in the spring. Because these grown cows leap. I mean, they look like calves. They are so delighted and kick up their heels. And it's just like this moment. And it's something tourists go to. And they go and they stand on the edge of this farmyard and delight at the cows' delight. So there may be things that are midwinter. There may be things, kind of welcoming the darkness and also celebrating kind of the return of the light that help you kind of expand on that. So thank you for bringing that up. Who would like to go next?
One of the areas we thought of is our reputation. Lanesboro has a reputation for being a great, warm, welcoming community. We have a great work ethic, a strong community. So we just thought that it was mentioned at the Lanesboro Community Foundation meeting on Sunday night about everybody wants to be like Lanesboro because of what we have. But like I said, even with I'm being probably one of the only people that was actually born and raised here in this room, besides Phil, but he left for a long time, is that we're so warm and welcoming, and everyone that's here has continued on that way as well. It's something that it's contagious.
We talked about building upon our information and our contacts that we already have existing, and then utilizing those to promote and build upon.
Yes. And that really speaks to the folks at the table too.
Yeah.
Some great context. Thanks to be with you. Thank you for sharing.
We were talking about one of the strengths that we've had in this area in the wintertime are these candlelight skis that first started out at the old barn in the 90s and really well attended, and then Whalen's candlelight ski, really well attended, and then...
So what are the opportunities based on what your stakeholders are asking?
You don't want to always do have
So if we can start on this side of the room to share one opportunity that you saw. Just one.
Restaurants to be open, I guess. We could spend a lot of time. I think we did food options as well, and whether that's within our community itself or partnering with other communities, but having more options.
Started with restaurants and dining. I think too is that the tourism is going to start overnight in the wintertime. So if we start with ideas that are based off of things that'll benefit the people that live here year round and use that as a catalyst, and like Shirley Fest, for example, that's a prime example of the type of marketing that we can do for wintertime activities. The people that live here aren't necessarily always the low-hanging fruit. So I think having that opportunity to build more events in the winter gives us that direction that changes a little bit from our summer activities, that makes it more inclusive and more of a community. So I think that our discussions should be included in those aspects, absolutely.
Very similar thoughts, more activities for locals, in particular, like more bands and music concerts.
Communication. And it's always, never seems to be enough, right? So people wanting more information, better communication, especially business to business. There's lots of tools out there, but being able to coordinate hours, opening times in the winter goes right alongside the restaurants, the events, coordinating so that when a restaurant says, yeah, I'll be open, it isn't for a time that no one's going to be around, or we do a festival and the restaurants aren't open because they expect nothing.
And the question prompt is, what do we care deeply about? So we're thinking about what could we be. We're really tying that to that core sense of your community and what you care about. So what is an aspiration that you identify?
Deep sense of community,
collaboration, the school district in that community as well, and then safety, just respect for each other and our own personal safety.
The arts in both like theater, the gallery, the local artists, supporting them.
Another one we had was history and just the stories of our community and our town. Not only just the downtown preservation, but also just like the stories within our community that run really deep.
The one I care most deeply about is, my team forced me to say this one, expanding our outdoor rec and like healthy communities of getting outside and exercising and being a healthy individual. Whether that's a curling rink, skijoring, which is skiing behind dogs, ice skating, hiking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, or even ice climbing.
Talk about prosperity and sustainability. That's how we have to do more. We have natural environmental resources, river bike trail hiking, and we have beautification and mobility through town.
So the signage or making sure people can get where they need to go.
Okay, we have maintaining the idyllic sense of well-being, like Mayberry. Maintaining the lack of light pollution, and possibly like a stargazing event, where you can have a dark sky to do it, probably Eagle Bluff. And good food that celebrates and supports our growers.
For us, the obvious sign is when the restaurants are open 7 days a week.
Amen.
Yeah. And then the other thing is when we have happy, content spending by visitors and locals.
Happy, content.
What can we build on? Seeing hustle return to town again. Repeat guests, and they're also starting to stay longer. I don't know what the rest of the ends. Winter retreats, to do projects such as dating and wrapping gifts. That's all I got.
Echo that. Returning guests, good reviews, the inns are full. We also touched on, a visitor comes to be an investor and then becomes a resident.
So we thought population growth is a good indication of Lanesboro's status and success, and that kind of goes hand in hand with economic growth, the housing market, having children in the schools, year-round residents.
We have somebody in our group that has vested interest in tangible, measurable results. And so we went with year-round cash flow that we could see if we moved from 11%, people making that in their year, maybe go over 20% for some, it's not going to be half of it, but it could be more. And then also another goal that we could see would be lodging tax increasing during the winter.
Yes, okay, so you can go ahead and put them in our last quadrant. And then I'm going to hand out just a little kind of reflection thing, but we would love to know sort of like what did you get out of this? What stands out to you? What you're taking with you today? And then there's also a question on here for your home zip code to help with some of our evaluation things. I'm going to incorporate that into our work. And then I also want to acknowledge Kristen's fantastic work. So please do take a moment to kind of take in what she's captured. And she will also be joining us for this evening as well. So that as a community, if you're not coming tonight for the mirror program, but you'll be able to see the same kind of work from that group's time together. So by all means, take it in, come and read, mill about, take your time. And then Allison, if you want to share things about kind of what's next for today and with the program.
Yeah, so again, thanks for being here. Tonight is the community open to the public event to share these results and just continue our conversation from 5 to 8. And then, yeah, moving forward, we'll just keep you, you know, in the loop with future meetings and future initiatives. We are going to focus on some training for the community and business owners and employees, focus on expanding the community investment co-op potential. What else? We're going to look at a marketing RFP to help us with marketing efforts. So yeah, there's still a lot of work left to be done, and we'll just keep you in the loop.
Right.